Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the sources, notes, and research you sent us about Anthropic's Claude AI. Our mission to really pull out the key insights, give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. And we're centering this deep dive around a really interesting question that's been, well, buzzing around. Claude gets a lot of praise, right, for safety, for ethical design. But some critics are starting to ask, is it too safe? Or maybe is it getting, too smart for our own good? That's where it gets fascinating. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. First off, what is Claude exactly? Well, it's a conversational AI model. It comes from Anthropic. And Anthropic itself, that was founded by former OpenAI folks, specifically the siblings Dario and Daniela Amodei. Even the name Claude, it's apparently a nod to Claude Shannon, father of information theory.
Yeah, and what's really foundational, I think, is Anthropic's mission. It's ambitious. Their goal is building AI systems that are reliable, steerable, interpretable, which, in simpler terms means powerful AI that doesn't just go rogue. And what really sets Claude apart right from the start is this very distinct safety-first idea and how they train it using something called constitutional AI. We'll definitely dig into that later.
Right. Now, if you've actually used Claude, especially the newer Claude 3, you probably notice something pretty quick. It feels remarkably calm. It seems less likely to hallucinate. That's when AI makes stuff up. It sounds confident about it. And it really does seem to steer clear of wild guesses or, controversial topics, almost like a diplomat.
A very careful diplomat at a dinner party.
Yeah, exactly. So users tend to say it's more emotionally intelligent, definitely more careful, but sometimes frustratingly cautious. So this brings us, and you listening, right to the core tension. Is this safety in Claude a feature? Or is it actually a flaw?
It's such a fascinating tightrope walk, isn't it? Because on one hand, as a feature, that caution, it's incredibly reassuring. I mean, we live in an age where AI could potentially give instructions for dangerous things accidentally. So having a model that leans towards safety, that double checks itself, that's a real plus.
Sure, that makes sense.
But then the other side, that same caution can feel like a flaw, especially for what you might call power users. Think developers, researchers, maybe creatives. For them, Claude's guardrails can sometimes feel like chains. Imagine trying to brainstorm some really edgy sci-fi plots, maybe, or analyze some really tricky ethical dilemmas. But the AI just keeps sort of dodging the darker angles.
Yeah, I can see how that would be frustrating. So that really leads to a critical question then, doesn't it? Is this responsible AI design? Or is it somehow limiting human imagination by just playing it too safe?
Exactly. And the real takeaway here isn't just that Claude is cautious. It's more like it's a living experiment, an experiment in whether this kind of ethical alignment has to mean trading off utility, especially for those advanced users. It forces the whole industry to think about what we prioritize. Is it a safe space for most users, or is it sort of unfettered potential for specific advanced needs?
Okay, so if those guardrails can feel like chains sometimes, how did Anthropic actually build them? What's the thinking behind it that makes Claude feel so different? This is where you get to that secret sauce you mentioned earlier.
Constitutional AI.
Yeah, right. So instead of, say, needing humans to label millions of examples of good versus bad behavior, Anthropic gave Claude a kind of constitution, basically a set of principles to follow. And these were inspired by things you'd recognize, like the UN Declaration of Human Rights or maybe Apple's privacy guidelines, things like that.
It's a clever approach.
It is. The process is pretty ingenious. Claude was essentially trained to self-reflect, to critique its own responses using this framework. It learned to police itself, in a way. Think of it like this. Maybe ChatGPT is the student asking the teacher, hey, was that answer okay? Claude is more like the student who was taught the rubric and how to grade their own paper.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, that self-critiquing method immediately brings up a huge question, doesn't it? When you teach an AI to follow a constitution, who gets to write that constitution?
That is the pivotal question, isn't it? Because like you said, safe AI isn't some objective, fixed thing. One person's idea of protection can easily be someone else's idea of censorship. And there are reports, for instance, that Claude sometimes refuses to engage with questions about certain sensitive topics, things like political manipulation, religion, gender, maybe violent history.
It draws lines.
It draws lines. So what does that mean for how it's used? Well, critics argue Anthropic might be acting a bit too, paternalistic, by deciding which topics are off limits, maybe shielding users from uncomfortable truths. And then there's the whole concern about bias, right? If the Constitution reflects the values of one particular group, let's say Silicon Valley technocrats,
Hypothetically, then Claude might just be reflecting a kind of filtered worldview.
And that immediately scales up to a global issue. What happens when this AI goes worldwide? Do users in, say, India or Nigeria or Brazil, do they get the same set of truths that Claude was trained on back in San Francisco? It makes you wonder, what stands out to you about who should be setting these ethical lines?
It's profound because it shapes the AI we all end up interacting with. Definitely something to think about. Okay, let's shift gears a bit, though. Let's talk about Claude's intelligence, its actual brains. Because in benchmark tests, Claude 3 Opus, that's Anthropic's top model right now, it absolutely holds its own against the big players. We're talking GPT-4, Gemini 1.5. Its abilities are apparently top tier in things like math, coding, reasoning across different languages, even human-level problem solving.
Yeah, some are even saying it's got more nuance maybe than GPT-4 in certain areas.
Right, and there's this other feature that's really remarkable.
Ah, the context window, yes.
Exactly. Claude has this incredibly long context window. It can handle up to 200,000 tokens.
Which, just to give you a sense of scale, that means it could potentially read an entire book, or analyze a massive chunk of code, or just hold an incredibly complex, long conversation, remembering everything. That is genuinely game-changing for what you can actually do with AI in practice. It's like having a huge library and a supercomputer combined.
But this leads us straight into a fascinating paradox, doesn't it? Claude might be one of the smartest AIs out there, and maybe also the most restrained. It's like, imagine you built the next Einstein, but this Einstein is under strict orders. Never offend anyone, never speculate too much, don't take risks. Is that brilliance we're seeing? Or is it wasted potential?
That paradox, that's critical for the whole future of AI development, I think. It really forces us to grapple with these trade-offs, maximizing raw capability versus embedding, necessary caution. The question isn't just if we can build super powerful AI anymore. It's becoming what kind of powerful AI do we actually want to unleash on the world?
So how does this play out in the real world right now? Let's look at the impacts. Claude is already being used. You see it in customer support, education, legal research, scientific writing. And in a lot of those fields, that careful, cautious tone is probably a good thing, right?
Yeah.
You likely want a cautious legal assistant.
Or a classroom tutor that avoids spreading misinformation. That's pretty much ideal.
Yeah.
But this raises an important question for other areas. What about journalism or art or, say, public debate? In those contexts, do we want an AI that always avoids the tricky gray zones, or do we sometimes need one that's willing to go there carefully with us? The answer probably changes depending on what you're trying to do.
And this all gets magnified as we, head closer towards artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
AGI, that theoretical point where AI can match human intellect across the board, the questions just get louder then. Are we pushing for a future where safety absolutely comes first, even if it means innovation slows down a bit?
Or is there a risk that we're unintentionally creating these sort of sanitized, maybe politically correct machines, ones that might end up serving corporate interests more than messy human reality?
It feels like a fundamental choice that's unfolding right now.
It really does.
So, circling back to our big question for this deep dive, Claude, too safe or too smart? Maybe the answer is, it's both. Claude feels a bit like the class valedictorian, perfect grades, cleanest record imaginable. Maybe also the kid who only raises their hand when the teacher explicitly asks them a question. It's impressive, it's responsible, no doubt, but possibly a little too reserved for some tasks, some users.
And I think that really reflects Anthropic's strategy here. They seem to be betting on slow and steady. They're playing the long game. In a field that's often obsessed with the next big, flashy breakthrough, Claude might actually be the model that's built to last, precisely because of that deliberate, cautious approach.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to criticize caution, isn't it? But maybe, just maybe, what some people are calling too safe could actually turn out to be the smartest move of all in the long run. Something to think about. We really encourage you to keep digging, stay curious, and keep thinking critically as these incredibly powerful AI systems continue to evolve.